Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, everybody. The podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will. And today we're here to talk Worlds Beyond Number.
Ooh, baby.
Before we dive in, the usual quick announcements, which I don't think we have anything really out of the ordinary this time, but join the Discord. Should find a link down there. We got our Critical Role watch party this Thursday. Sunday Fun Day watch parties probably returning soon.
Are we off this Thursday?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. We might be.
I think we're off.
Oh,
However, join the Discord anyway to
Yeah.
talk Worlds Beyond Number. We need more views.
We do.
in this Discord.
We do. We need more of the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One fans. But we've been getting more recently, and I've actually really enjoyed the discussion that's been happening in there.
Yes.
But on that note, actually, for those of you that, well, I guess if you're a Critical Role fan of ours, you're probably not watching this video. But if you are, great time to jump into this because we are coming up on the final episode of this third arc. Is it the fourth arc?
This is the third arc.
Third, yeah. So great time to jump in. I'll give this same spiel in our next Critical Role episode. But yeah, so join the Discord. But yeah, I think you're right. I didn't even realize there was no episode this week.
Yep.
But yeah. Yeah, I guess that's really all I got, I guess. Unless
we just had our D&D one shot this last Friday.
Yeah.
And had a lot of fun with some of our Discord peeps. We're gonna be having another one in the next couple of months, so more details to follow about that. And this morning I started cooking on the next one after that.
Ooh,
and little shower time. Well, that sounds a little weird, but
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
The shower thoughts. That's like the best time, you know.
As I sit in darkness and think about my existential being, I started ruminating on a new D&D one shot.
This is the way.
So, yeah,
this is the way for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Anyway. Yeah, but we do have a D&D channel in there, by the way. For those of you who just like D&D in general, it's a great place to have some nice chatter and discussion. So you can check that out too.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I guess that's all we got for our normal announcements.
Yeah. So without further ado, then let's jump into our recap. We're going to talk a little Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. I actually don't know what this episode is called.
Me either. I'll look it up really quick.
It's on my mobile. Hang on.
I'm gonna beat you. I'm probably not.
I don't know. I'm so fast.
Vamping.
Oh! Why is it not my trending? No, it's not in my trending or my played on Spotify because right now it's full of D&D playlists and Disney for my kids.
Nice.
So
yeah, sure it is.
Moana, Frozen. Yeah, right.
The kids.
Yeah. And what episode was this? 33?
Yeah.
Okay. The Witness. Okay. So without further ado, let's dive into our recap for episode 33, The Witness. And we basically take the couple hours of this episode and boil it down to 10 to 15 minutes. And then we jump into our full episode discussion. So if you're watching just the recap, click the link below in the description box to get our full discussion and also let us know what you thought about this episode. But as I mentioned, Ep 33, The Witness, in this episode opens up with the Antivolist Tefmet, who is essentially describing these discs, these items of malintent that the Citadel has presumably created in order to, as the Antivolist describes it, control the great spirits of the spirit realm. As they're looking at it, Ursulon describes himself as being incredibly upset in seeing this and actually stands to his feet and demands to know, like, where did you come across this? Where's this from? The Antivolist explains that it was collected from a shipwreck of a ship that was on its way. I think it was from being kept in a warehouse and was being taken to the Citadel. The witches turn to Ame, seeing how upset Ursulon is, and is essentially like, have y'all seen this before? Do you know what this is? And Ame, much to Ursulon's surprise, Ame says, I think we've heard of it, and essentially has like a crisis of friendship knowing that her best friend Suvi is who's not in the room, that it would look very bad to be like, yes, here's all the things we know about it. In that moment, Ursulon also describes himself as being incredibly surprised that Ame would say this, and as he puts it, deeply hurt that she would obfuscate the history of this item. I think there was a deception roll, maybe. Doesn't fly. The witches jump on this immediately and are extremely upset that Ame has lied to her coven. We find out later, I won't get into it, but we find out later that this isn't like a white lie that you can casually make, but actually there are some standards here for lying around the witches, and that Ame has done something very wrong by lying to them. Grimoire points out that it's obvious why she's lying, that her friend Suvi, a wizard of the Citadel, roams our halls. And essentially, Ame is demanded to be forthcoming as to how she knows about these discs. She basically tells the story of what happened in Port Talon. The Antivolus realizes that, okay, if this is the case, then our window is drastically closing. They're actually much farther along than we realized. This is also the time that Marara sort of jumps in and says, because of the nature of this, it's more important than ever that we partner with the Man in Black. The Man in Black has, and I don't remember the details, but it was like the 7 kings of Ruve or something to that effect, like all the leaders of Ruve. Do you know what that was, by the way? Like that specific title?
I have it written down somewhere, but I'll maybe can find it by the time we get to the discussion.
It was implied to be like whoever the leaders are of Ruve,
Yeah.
that they have pledged their loyalty to the Man in Black. I think it was also mentioned that there was like 1 million Ruvians
Like
that were
a million
also,
million or something. It was like crazy. Yeah.
basically a huge freaking army ready to march on the Citadel and destroy it. And Morar basically says, like, we need to band together, ally with the Man in Black, and take down the Citadel. Like, this is our only chance. Ame is understandably torn by this at the idea of destroying Suvi's home, and challenges it and asks, like, well, what's going to happen to that Ruvian army? And like, what about the Man in Black? And how about the fact that he attacked Grandmother Rin? And Morar points out that the Man in Black paid for that, has already paid his price for that. But ultimately, they decide that they're going to take a vote on this back in the Coven's inner sanctum in a little bit. And then also when it comes to bringing new witches to the Coven, Indri points out that, hey, with this new information, it's really not the right time to vote and bring other witches in. And I think also above the table, Brennan says that Indri has worked for hundreds, if not more, years to bring the Coven down to this number. And there's no way she's ever going to let, like, yeah, let's just bring in, here's bringing a couple more. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, we cut over to Suvi, who Suvi is, I think I can't remember if we covered the identifying spell of the bridle of Haloman. But Brennan had mentioned basically that this was like one of the great bridles that could control a number of beasts, or rather partner with a number of beasts. But also Suvi's keen enough to understand that, like, there's a reason why she had to go place the music box. She doesn't really know why. And she's smart enough to end up casting the identify spell on herself to try to figure out why is she acting the way that she is. And so in this private time, she casts this spell. I can't do it justice. Brennan basically gives this incredibly beautiful description of like stars in the sky and like Suvi sort of floating through space, seeing like a number of spells that have been warded off from her from the I think it was like the ring from her father, but more specifically the amulet that her mother had given her.
Right.
And this includes a number, I think it was like 20 some odd scry spells that had failed to locate her. And ultimately, she realizes that the spell controlling her, or rather directing her, is the 5th level Gaius spell, an incredibly power spell that is based around the charm person spell, and is also what we supposed Steele had casted on her at the beginning of this arc. Seemingly, that is confirmed. Um, all that to say, around this time, Ursulon and Ame step in to see a emotionally wrecked Suvi. And do you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. So Ame and Ursulon walk in on Suvi, like basically crumbled on the floor, like kind of breaking down. And they're like, "What is wrong?" And she says, "Something's wrong with me, but I don't even know what it is." And so they, of course, immediately try to comfort her. There's some really beautiful moments in this scene with Ursulon casting Protect Good and Evil on her, which mirrors a moment that Suvi did the very same to him when they first met as children. But like as they're trying to kind of comfort her and figure out what's going on, Neef then like raps on the window and she's got this crow with her and she's like, "Ame, can I speak with you?" And so Ame quickly like goes to the door to talk to Neef, and she says, or excuse me, the crow that is with her says, "My mistress Marara wishes a word with you." And then they both basically just leave. The crow and Neef, that is. So Ame then turns back, goes back to Suvi, and Suvi's like, "I realize that I have a powerful spell compelling me, and my memory has been altered. But I'm not really ready to process or speak about that yet. Like, can you guys just tell me what happened during the Coven meeting?" And Ame and Ursulon both kind of look at each other awkwardly, like, "Oh, we have more bad news." So neither of them want to say anything. And so the fox just steps up and is the one to tell Suvi what happens. And, he pulls no punches and basically says, "Yeah, there's a vote in an hour on if, the witches are going to join with the stranger to take out the Citadel." And Suvi just like screams in frustration at this moment. And Ursulon kind of elaborates a little bit more, saying that, yeah, there are more wizards like Moro. And he explains exactly what Tefmet showed them with the discs and what Tefmet said. And what follows is basically this kind of emotional, heated argument where Ame and Ursulon are both kind of pushing against Suvi in the sense of explaining that the Citadel is clearly up to some really messed up things, whereas Suvi is pushing back, saying like, "Okay, but what's the actual evidence here? Like one of our enemies, the Antivalist, is saying this. Like, what proof is there actually? Like, this isn't enough." Like, and so they just basically have this heated argument. Some low blows are thrown, and it ends ultimately with Suvi saying like, "I'm gonna need more evidence to throw my entire life away." um Ame leaves to go speak with Marara, not really having settled that. And so she goes, and the crow meets her at Marara's quarters, and we find out this crow's name is Cross. And the crow kind of guides her down to where Marara is, and Marara says, "I'm glad we're both alive against our sister's plans. But I now need to speak to you of the power of unanimity." I have trouble with this word. Unanimity? Um, and how many lives might be spared, or just consider how many lives might have been spared if we had reached this conclusion earlier. So, like, it's important and imminent that we do so now. And if we're unanimous, that's going to be just so much better. And she explains that, "I'm not wicked or cruel. I am a truth that is just ill regarded. Like, I am a devoted witch. It's just that my station isn't appreciated." And then she goes to say that Rin was a bad witch. She did not serve her station in truth. And of course, takes big issue with that. And she says, "Yeah, well, you don't need to be wicked or cruel to be wrong. Rin wasn't just optimistic, she was practical." Um, and they kind of have a little bit of a back and forth, with Marara clearly trying to get Ame on their page for this upcoming vote. And one thing that kind of sticks out in particular is Marara mentions bringing the mortal world to heal, which is kind of more than what had been discussed so far, because it had just been discussed like, let's deal with the Citadel, not let's bring mortals to heal. And so as Marara is trying to convince her, she says like, "Hey, like I could speak to the stranger, and how about you can be the one to guide the relationship of humanity once we like bring them to heal. And, so if you vote with me, like you can be the one in charge of that." And Ame refuses. And Marara's like, "Well, just name what you need then. Name what you need to vote with us." And um Ame says, just like there's nothing. Like, know that I will prove you guys wrong. Um she does ask for the remainder of the year that the man in black promised her, though, when he at the beginning of the story, when she asked him to come back in 1 year. So Ame says, "Give me the rest of that year before we make any big moves." Um, but their conversation doesn't really go anywhere, so Ame departs. And then we cut to the conclave, the meeting, and the business at hand. Or again, it's only the witches in this conclave. But will they join with the man in black? This unanimous decision would bring great power. So let's get to it. Does anyone object to holding this vote? No one does. So now to put forth the vote. But Ame says, well, let me say some stuff first. First of all, what happens when humanity is defeated? And Grimoire says, this war is not with humanity, it's just with the Citadel. And Ame's like, well, what if we parlay with the Citadel? Give them a chance to kind of change their ways. And Indri says, Rin has tried that for the past 30 years and nothing has happened. And Ame's like, well, Rin was cursed. I was cursed. Like, I'm here now. The curse has been removed. Can I try? And all the witches are like, no. Like, we've been waiting this long. The time for that has passed. There's no more time to spare. So we need to do this vote. Do we join the King of Night? So Marara and Grimoire are first to vote, and they both vote yes. Ame votes no, and then Indri votes no. So we have a 2-2 tie with Kea being the only one left. She looks at Ame and says, "Thank you for waking me up. I've taken a liking to you. But I vote yes. Let's take that tower down." And that's where the episode ends. Again, episode 33, The Witness. And if you're just watching our recap, be sure to check out our full discussion linked down below. What an ending, man.
Snacking a little as
Hey,
you were.
You gotta do what you snacking on.
Joey brought me some chicken nuggets because I hadn't eaten lunch yet. So
delicious.
That's right. I'm a 36-year-old man who.
Bro, I still eat chicken nuggets. If you don't eat chicken nuggets, I don't trust you, honestly.
Chicken nuggets and SpaghettiOs, baby, and mac and cheese. What else do you need?
That's right. Nectar of the gods.
Usually I eat it when I'm visiting my parents, and they're like, "Do you still play video games?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yep.
And my
Those
dad
are still a thing.
Defeated. He looks defeated and walks out of the room. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
Just close the front door.
What a crazy episode. This might have been my favorite episode.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this last time about how Taylor Moore had tweeted that like this next episode is the one you guys have been waiting for. And yeah, it definitely felt like, and we've talked about it a lot, this whole kind of like under the surface bubbling tension between Ame and Suvi, really, but these grander ideas of like the spirit and humanity. So yeah, man, that conversation was, I didn't do it justice in the recap because I didn't think I could, but just like the emotions during that heated discussion, some low blows were thrown out.
I think before we get into it though, I'll just say I loved last episode. So when Taylor Moore tweeted that, I was like, I don't know, man. Last episode was really good, but after seeing this one, after listening to this one, I totally was there. I was like, yes, this was so freaking good. In general, like the arcs are just getting better and better too. Yeah. Which it was great from day one, but like especially this arc has been crazy good.
Agreed.
And we have confirmation that the next step is the last one of the arc.
Yeah, we've been saying that for like 3 months, but it's finally happening.
Yeah. If we just keep saying it, at some point we're right. So
that's right.
But let's get into that conversation. Man, what a first of all, I'll just say this is like the brilliance of role play on display. Like how well the three of them played
Yes.
against one another without missing a beat.
Yes.
I think of like Suvi. I loved the cognitive dissonance and like Suvi jumping into, well, how do you know? How do you know?
Mhm.
And like Lou Wilson just
Yes.
jumping in with, you were there. You were there,
He screams, you know?
dude,
That was
dude.
so
And then
good.
once the conversation like devolved, and Ame, who I feel like usually I don't say plays nice, but is sometimes a little bit more deferent, how she stood her ground to
Yeah.
Suvi. And then when Suvi, I mean, Aabria, which just I think everyone knows this, but I think it's worth a disclaimer because I feel like this keeps coming up in like other forms of content. Players love each other. They're awesome. This is just good role play. Don't read too into it.
Yeah.
But when Aabria was, playing through Suvi and like laid out a couple of those low blows, like I know you don't know what it's like to have a family or something.
Yeah.
I literally like mouth dropped and I literally was like, oh my gosh. Like what a thing to say to your
Yeah.
friend.
Right?
I mean, dude, that
Just
whole conversation was nuts. Seriously.
just going for the jugular, like right where you know, like because only your like closest friends can kind of hit that like sensitive spot, you know. But yeah, it was brutal. But yeah, I loved it, and yeah, it really speaks to just how crazy talented everyone in that group is. And I mean, you guys listening know how much Blake and I love Brennan. But he was devoid in this scene. Like, and
Yeah.
that's like a great like that's what you want as a DM, right? When you
Well,
don't
and
have to do anything.
I'll say the two other characters at the table, yeah, Brennan and Taylor Moore, like two people who realized how important this moment was. Brennan didn't intrude on it, and like the players had such an awesome thing between them. And then also, it was totally silent. Like there was no
Mm,
music. Like
yeah.
I feel like that was such a thoughtful decision there because I mean, it could have been like an obnoxious like dun dun when there was like a real hit of an insult.
Yeah, like Mexican soap opera, like
Yeah. I think just the total silence of it just created so much more there. So I give credit to the two of them as well. But
yeah.
this 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 argument's been a long time coming. So
Yeah.
and there's actually been a few of them if you think about it. Or not on this level of insult, but anyway.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that because I didn't even like I didn't have the like I didn't register that until you said it that like there was the deliberate silence and that is like that can be just as impactful as the perfect score, right? The intentional
Right.
use of silence. So yeah, that was amazing. And we'll just get this out of the way cuz we're already talking about it, but the score in general this episode it, when it wasn't silent was
Yeah.
incredible as it always is. Like
Oh,
just
like and like the Marara
yes.
Ame. I was like, is Ame gonna die? Like
Yes.
I was so nervous, man. Like usually when the episode drops, I have about an hour of drive time, and then I will finish the other half either later that day or later in the week. But I did the old like pull up in my driveway and I just sat
Just
and
sat there.
listened. I just listened because I was at the part where Ame goes to see Marara, and
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I'm like glued. Like I can't get out of the car.
Yeah.
And my kids are like banging on the door, let us in. And I was like, nope, you know, gotta finish
Dad,
this.
please.
It's been 45 minutes. It's
Yeah.
hot. So
But yeah, totally with you. It was a edge of the seat type of episode all the way through, honestly. But yeah,
I guess
sound design incredible. But yeah, Brennan just taking a step back in that scene to pick back up there, I thought just spoke to how like just how good everyone is and able to capitalize on those moments, you know? Like cuz it's much
and
easier like it's easy to say like, "Oh yeah, that's such like a like we've been building to this moment, like of course," but like you s- that doesn't just happen just because you set the like two PCs have these conflicting things does not make a compelling moment like that, you know, speaking from experience of, being in that DM chair, people just be like, "Okay, well,
yeah.
yeah, we're
All
gonna
right.
vote to take out the Citadel. So what now?"
Yeah. All
Uh,
right, we voted.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that you say that too, because yeah, you're pointing out a really good dynamic at the table that I think a lot of newer players don't realize. And we've mentioned this before, but a great D&D table isn't just the DM, which Brennan is so freaking amazing, but it's not just Brennan. You have three incredible people at the table. Like, I adore these three people. And that moment, like, Brennan didn't, I mean, excuse me, Brennan helped create that, obviously, but they saw the opportunity, they ran with it, they acted it beautifully, and you need that. And I think sometimes for people who show up and kind of expect the DM, like, what do you got for me today? Like,
Yeah.
maybe they're disappointed in the quality of their game because they're not realizing like it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
So I think this dialogue really illustrates that.
100%. And I know you already mentioned it, but I just want to say it again, like how powerful that Ursulon moment was. Just because he's never really gotten in the middle of that debate,
Right.
but now, he has very compelling reasons to be upset. So I love that he yelled, and I love how Suvi reacted to it because her immediate, like, she didn't push back against that because she's like, I'm the reason you're trapped here. Like, it was immediate guilt from her. So just the whole dynamics at play there were so good. And Aabria, like, her choice to do that identify spell, and that's the moment immediately preceding this, like, that, this is gonna sound dumb, but like, that wasn't necessary. Like, we could have just, Abria could have just been at even keel when she's presented with this information, but now it's like the choice to like be in the depths. And especially, like, we can talk about this in a second, but that vision should cast a lot of doubt on the Citadel for her. And
Mhm.
so, like, but instead of like at all being open to that, it's instead the complete opposite, like extremely defensive, even though you just had this moment that maybe would have lended you to agree with what was happening. Just really
Yeah.
cool choice to like put your
It was
character in that spot.
it was kind of like Total Recall-esque of like, you're having this conversation about the baddies and like, Arnold Schwarzenegger realizes that, I pretty much say like spoilers, but it's also, a 30-year-old movie
Yeah,
or whatever. But
classic
it
though.
was, it was kind of like that though, in the sense of like she's realizing like, oh, something's happened to me. It's happened to me by the Citadel, I think presumably. But maybe she hasn't fully put that together. But then yeah, going straight into like defense mode, it was and I'm also kind of like really wondering like the outcome of this conversation because Ame had to leave to go meet with
Mm,
Marara. Some incredibly hurtful things were said,
yeah.
mostly by Suvi to Ame. This has been like a consistent rift between them throughout the entire campaign, but this felt like a wound that you don't just gloss over.
Yeah.
Like previously, it was like when they were escaping the Citadel, it was like you left and I asked you not to, and that really upset me. Like it's creating all. And this is the same thing with like Naram. In my head, I was thinking Father Neptune. I don't even know what that is. I was like, that's not right. Same thing. So it was kind of like there was some annoyance and sort of trauma there, but this felt like an actual like wound happening. And so I'm just very curious, like their dynamic. Like,
Yeah.
does this get resolved in an episode, or is this like going to be a consistent riff now? Because Ame's like putting her. I mean, I think if nothing else, it highlights how loyal she is to Suvi and grandmother Ren. In that after this conversation, Ame could have been like, "Screw you!" Like, yeah, let's burn it down.
Yeah.
But she didn't. So, which again, I think grandmother Ren has a part to that. But
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens because, like, we know the next episode's the last one of this arc. They clearly just had this big rift. We know that, I at least assume that Ame is not trying to go back to the Citadel right now, but I assume
right.
that's what Suvi's going to want to do. So I'm curious if we might get a little like party split for like, and obviously on meta level, we know that's not going to happen, but like, even if it's like a time jump situation or something, but yeah, because like, even if both parties were like, "Hey, sorry for what I said," which I don't think that's going to happen immediately, the the underlying issue is still there. Like, this is still a thing. Like, because the witches have now voted yes, they will be teaming up against the Citadel. Like, how are we going to reconcile this? I don't feel like Suvi's ready to like to see things from that other side yet. But maybe it's one of those things where like Suvi, like they're not chill yet, but like they're gonna continue being amicable. But now Suvi has this big question about what the hell that identify spell was. So maybe if she on her own investigates that and gets more stuff to kind of push her back towards where Ame and Ursulon are, maybe that's how they get back. But I don't know, man.
Well, can we transition to talking about that identify spell?
Yeah, which I want to you haven't heard the fireside chat, right? What was crazy is that was all improv from Brennan.
Hey, I was actually gonna ask you what you thought of that because Brennan, like, I just like was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like the way he so eloquently described and did all that, I was blown away by that description.
Yeah, me too. And the fact that it was improv is just crazy. Like, he had no heads up that Suvi was planning to do that or would even consider doing that. And just the way he wove that was beautiful, and the way that sky and it was a constellation,
Yeah.
and just all the imagery was so cool, and just all the like lore dump within it too, like with the sigils and all the scry spells and the protective barrier, and just also the rubies that were like the prophecies. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
There was some description during the identify spell of like a man in a coat like dropping rubies like shooting stars that were like prophecies, and I didn't know what that was supposed to mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Um, that I was so like blown away by the whole thing that I was like, what even just happened? It's
Yeah.
like it's like one of those movies where like the good guy gives like a charismatic speech to the bad guy, and the bad guy's like, what did you just say? Like what? But the scry spells, these are implied to be from the Citadel
Yeah.
or from Steel,
I,
or do we know?
I think Citadel for certain, but whether or not, because there were a lot, I think. And I think
And there
they
was
talked about it in the fireside a little bit, that basically Brennan, now don't quote me on this, but was saying that like, during that time where Suvi was missing, like the speaking
yeah,
mirror had broken and she was just
right.
traveling with Ame and Ursulon for months. Like all of these scry spells were coming in. So Steel, I would imagine, or at least some of them, but maybe more from the Citadel. But what the point he brought up that is very interesting is the fact that this was never spoken to. Like
Yeah.
when Suvi was rescued, Steele wasn't
Yes.
like, I've been scrying on you for 3 months. How come I haven't seen you? Like that was never
Yes.
brought up as an issue, which is very suspicious.
Yes. And that was my biggest point of suspicion on my end was that logically it makes sense why all those scry spells happened. The the detail that's most troubling is I don't want to just repeat what you said, but yes, that is what stood out
Yeah.
to me also was like, how come Steele wasn't forthcoming about this? And like, hey, yeah, we casted these spells, and I don't know, something was very odd about all that. Um, I don't want to just be a broken record about Steel being the BBEG, but we do talk a lot about Steel and like, I don't know, and like something's very suspicious about all of this.
Yeah.
And the longer the campaign goes, the more I am. And the way we've described it for people listening, maybe I've heard like previous episodes, we don't think Steel is like a mustache twirling villain, like you uncovered my plot, but at least I see it a lot more in like line of Thanos-esque of her reasoning makes sense, her thinking makes sense. She's unapologetically pro Team Citadel, and that has created a direct contrast with likely Suvi's parents, and like maybe she was involved in their death. And I can't remember the name of the other organizations. There was like the good organization that was secret, but then there was like the
Right.
bad one too.
Right. I can't
Um,
remember off the top of my head either.
all that to say, I'm I'm back on it now.
Yeah.
In suspicion of Steel.
It's certainly suspicious. Devil's Advocate, I mean, at least some of those scries had to have been Steel. Like
Yeah.
there's no way they weren't, but it's at least possible that some of them could have been other entities at the Citadel.
Right.
And that's why Steele personally wasn't the one that potentially brought it up to Suvi, being like, why couldn't I see you? But
Was
again, at least some of them had to have been Steele, so it's still suspicious that she didn't say that. But maybe
was
not
the
all of
impl-
them were.
was the implication of the speaking mirror was that it was also like a tracking thing too? Or
I get maybe,
he
but I
said
think
like,
it was more so that like that was the direct line of communication
oh,
that was
okay.
then severed, you know? But I wouldn't be surprised if that also could have served as a little GPS.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
Um,
it's understandable that Suvi is so unwilling to go this route of thinking because we know. Was this in the argument with Ame, or was this earlier when she says basically like Steele is her mom, like that's my mother?
yeah, I think it was during the argument. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
which we already knew that relationship was there, but for me, it at least added like even more foundation for the relationship. Like, oh, it's not just like the mentor.
mhm,
Like this is my mom. Like
yeah,
this is the person who raised me.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like it's all Suvi's ever known, right? Her entire life, she's
Yeah,
been this word might be a bit harsh, but indoctrinated. You know, so
yeah.
like I think it makes complete sense that she's not ready to just throw that all away at the first sign of foul play. Um, so
It's hard to realize you're in a cult.
yeah,
You know.
totally. And while us as being viewers having more of like a not an omniscient, but more of a perspective compared to Suvi in the story, um, we are like, yeah, well, clearly the Citadel is doing some messed up stuff. But I think it's entirely fair. Like the points she was making, like were cogent in the sense of like, this is our biggest enemy that's telling you this. Of course, like, can you not see the angle that they would just say this get these to get you guys to help them take us out? Like, that is a fair point. Um, but I definitely think she's not really making that from a point of rationality. I don't think it's from like coping, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
and then the other detail that I was fuzzy on was, did we walk away from the conversation with the Antivalist of Moro did this on his own and the Wizards of the Citadel realized the potential there? Or was it, and I think it's the second one though, this is like part of the height of Citadel technology, and Moro was like one of the bumbling test areas or spaces
yeah.
where they actually tried it out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you the same thing because I know we left the previous episode assuming the latter, that like this was a grander conspiracy going on in the Citadel and Moro was just like one facet of it.
Yeah.
But then this episode, it didn't eliminate that as a possibility, but it seemed like this episode leaned more towards this was Moro's doing and the Citadel was like going to study this now. But it might just be that like we just don't have enough information. It makes more
I don't
sense to me to be the other way, that because it doesn't seem
yeah.
like Moro was that like capable
I
to have
think I
like
think the
done this
reason
all on his own.
Yeah, and I think the reason the lines are a little blurred is because that is how Ame presented it. Was like, oh, this was I think Ame may have even used the word hedge mage. I can't remember, but a mage, a lowly mage of the Citadel, for lack of a better phrase, who figured this out, and it's not as bad as it seems. But um, the reason I don't think it's this and that it's a grander plot is because the Antivalus seems to have known about it before they knew about Naram. Like, here's all the things that are happening. And then when Ame mentioned like it's already been done, it was like, oh wow, well then we really need to act. So for
True.
me, and we know that there were data points that were destroyed, like papers. Like this
Yeah.
is what was revealed after evidence was destroyed. So for me, there must be like more compelling things there that suggest a grander narrative or a grander plot here that Moro was just caught up in. Um, but I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of intentionally vague. It could go either way. Like I remember
Yeah.
last episode when we saw the discs, I didn't assume those were literally the Moro discs,
Right.
which also led me to believe like, oh, this is from another instance, so that there's definitely widespread
Hmm.
conspiracy. But then this episode implied that those literally were the Moro discs that they
Right.
intercepted. So
Yes.
yeah, I think it could go either way, but I'm with you that I feel like it just makes way more sense. Plus, combined with the other stuff, the the fact that they tried to like subjugate a great spirit with that teleportation gate or whatever, and the fact that like they had those time spells on the rations to venture into the spirit. Like Moro wasn't doing that, presumably.
No.
So like even
Yeah.
if his discs were his self-contained experiment, the Citadel was obviously has their toes dipped in this as well.
Let's go back to Steele because Steele presented it to Suvi as like, oh, rogue experiment. Oh yeah, it went wrong. Like, eh, doesn't Suvi doesn't Steele's station imply like a deep ins and outs understanding of like the machinations of the Citadel? Like,
Yeah.
doesn't this like even it feels like this makes her look even worse. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, surely she's not being forthcoming. Like, I just feel like there's no situation where she's like, what? They have the discs?
Yeah.
I just don't think I see that.
I
She
agree
commands
with
the
you.
armies of the Citadel,
Yeah, she's
so
seemingly one of the highest ranked people that's not one of the archmages or whatever they're
right.
called. I forget.
Yeah.
But I will say it's at least possible that she didn't know, because maybe
Okay.
she's just not
Okay,
in the
Suvi.
loop on everything. But I agree with you.
Okay,
I
come
think
on.
I think she definitely has known more than she's let on.
Oh, man. Um, by the way, since we mentioned Naram, did you catch the detail about,
His
what's
dad
Naram's wife, uh,
or
her
Arima?
lover, Arima, having already allied with
Yeah,
the Man
and
in
his
Black?
dad. Those were the
Oh,
two
well,
that were mentioned. Yeah.
Naram's dad or
Yeah.
Ursulan's dad? Oh, okay.
Naram's
That
dad. Naram's dad. Because
that detail I missed.
I want to talk about that separately.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so don't remind me of that. But yeah, and that line was like two powerful spirits have already partnered with him as well. It was Arima and the Storm Lord's in my head because of Critical Role. That's not what it is, but
Okay,
that
yes.
is Naram's father.
Yes, I did actually I remember the line, but it didn't click for me. But you're right. Yeah. All right, we can table that and come back to that then.
Um,
Um,
what was I gonna say? Well, I lost my train of thought, so maybe we can just go ahead and move there, and if I remember, we'll come back.
all right, we're gonna go ahead and come back to that now, guys. Yeah, dude, this went from like, you know, 6 out of 10 to like a full 10 out of 10 in terms of like intensity and like urgency. It was like, let's talk about the Man in Black. Like, what's he up to a million soldiers or spirits? I wasn't sure of the phrasing.
Yeah, a million soldiers in reference to Ruve, which
Yes.
I'm not. I don't know if I know what that phrasing means, but a million makes me think a million millions. But the world surely is not that big. But maybe it just means like 2 million. I don't know.
It makes me think back to a session in one of my D&D campaigns where like a city had been destroyed and one of my players was describing it to an NPC and they were like millions died. And I was like, well there was like 200 people there, but it's a pretty small starter town, but
Yeah, yeah.
millions died.
Still very sad.
Yeah. But
but
yeah, that's huge for sure.
but yeah, I mean, even if it's a million, again, even if let's just assume it means 1 million on the lower end of things, that's still huge, right? So like, how big are these countries or kingdoms? I guess.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote down what it was said there. So one sec.
Yeah, yeah.
He commands the house of Tikal, which I don't think we've ever heard that before. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's like the royal house of Ruve or if it's unrelated to Ruve. Where's the stone of Kostfi? No idea what that is. I'm assuming a powerful artifact or something. Has fealty from the King of Storms, so that would be Naram's dad, and then Orima. There's 12 spirits in Ruve whose warlocks swore fealty to him. And then the million soldiers. So
Bro.
like
This dude's kidded out.
Yeah. And then I don't remember if this was in the fireside or in the actual episode, but like it was mentioned that like the King of Night by himself, like no wizard on the planet could do anything to him. And but now he has like these armies behind him too. So like the real deal, you know?
This is very much like it adds so much color to the conversation with Ursulon. Like this wasn't like some random like we knew he was a bad deal or
Yeah.
a big deal. And like, oh, here he is showing up at Grandmother Wren's cottage and showing up for Ursulon. It's like, yeah, I know you're a big deal, but it's like, oh no, you're a big deal.
Yeah.
Like to have that kind of pull. And I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I also, by the way, I just love little lore details of, where's the stone of Kosti.
Yeah.
I like imagining like what that is and where it could go. But yeah, I guess we're going to war in the next arc or down the
Yeah.
road. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. And the Coven of Elders is with him, which again, I don't remember if this detail was in the episode or not, but it was made clear that like just because they did vote yes, Ame won't be like forced to do something she doesn't want to. It's just like the Coven, since it was voted yes, they are able to do whatever they want to help him, but no one will be compelled to help him.
Okay, yeah,
type of
that
thing.
was mentioned. That was mentioned in the episode
Okay.
too.
But yeah, I mean, is he like the most powerful spirit? Like, is he a great spirit? It seems like he has to be.
Yeah.
Which
Well, you think about like the hierarchy of great spirits and yeah, I mean, two incredible ones, the Stormlord, sorry, whatever it is.
yeah, King of
And,
Storms, I think is
King of Storms and Arima working for him basically. I mean, yeah, he's huge. He's a big
Yeah.
deal. And
which
do we think
Go
I was gonna
ahead.
say, do we think he's the BBEG?
I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting because like again, we don't have the full picture, but like it seems as if he has a point. Like he's not just doing it. He again, we don't know, but it seems as if he's doing it for like reasonable reasons, like because of what the Citadel's doing. So I don't know if he,
I'm
you
kind of
know,
pro Man in Black, I feel like.
I mean, I'm not like pro him, but I'm just saying it's like
Well, that's because you always love the baddies and
it's less
whatever
black
show
and
we
white is
watch.
all I'm saying. So what I
No,
mean
no,
is I could see
haven't.
the BBEG being a Citadel entity just
Let
as
me
easily as I could see it being the
let me ask you
Stranger.
this: what have we seen the Citadel do that's like redeeming so far?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so we agree. Let's tear it down.
I mean,
All I'm
we
gonna
at least
say,
need new leadership.
fair. All I'll say is Ame standing her ground and the way she talked about Grandmother Rin, like what a just I wish I was smarter than to just keep saying like it was so beautiful, but like so poignant, so beautiful. Erika Ishii, like I loved the way she described Grandmother Rin as not just being optimistic but grounded and practical.
Yeah.
And like I feel like she just gave so much dignity and honor to Grandmother Wren in that moment. But also, part of me, I felt conflicted because I was kind of like, Marara, for example, said a pretty harsh thing of, Ren was a bad witch.
Yeah.
Like, what a thing to say. And I don't agree with her, but I'm also like, hey, on paper, it kind of makes sense to tear the Citadel down. Like, is there a world, Ame, that you say, Grandmother Wren, I love you, but this is the right decision moving forward? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Ame is nothing. If nothing, she is extremely loyal to Suvi and Grandmother Wren, loyal to a fault. And so, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the happiest ending here is that the Citadel doesn't need to be completely destroyed. It just needs to be it's misguided, I guess. But like, can you really put a cap on that? I don't know. So like maybe you do need to get rid of it completely. But like, so I think it might have been idealistic and naive, but I think Grandmother Rin's heart was in the right place. Not that you were saying it wasn't, but
No, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
yeah. So like, I don't know. Like, I did think it was like I feel like everyone's viewpoint makes sense here. Like Marara like could just be so like you just think Rin was like delusional, right? Like she was a bad witch. 'Cause she like all these people are going to die now because Rin couldn't make that tough call, right? Um, but I think also in that conversation, even though she called her a bad witch, Marara also referred to her as like the most powerful. Unless I got my like descriptions confused. Because I remember like noting that when I was listening that I probably need to go back and find it, but I felt like there was some statement that like she was like the most powerful of us and
I don't
or
remember.
something.
Yeah.
I don't
I
really have
loved
a point to make with that, but
I loved Marara saying I'm not a bad witch,
yeah,
which I kind of viewed her as like the evil one. And so
right.
I just kind of loved Brennan kind of calling that out and being like, I'm not a bad witch. Um, which by the way, the scene with Ame and like Marara in the darkness and like how Brennan described like her getting angry and the mask like raising in the air and
Yeah.
like you hearing like the scratching of stone and
Yeah.
stuff of nightmares, by the way, which again, shout out to Taylor Moore. Like that whole scene was nuts. Um, I do wonder about Marara's true form, but getting back to the point of what we were just saying, I see where Marara's coming from for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, something's got to give, right? Like the Citadel is gearing up to subjugate the great spirits, like, and that's not like the balance must be maintained. So,
And that I think this was said. I don't think I'm making this up, but wasn't it said there was a oh man, what are they called? The cantrips that are personified.
oh yeah. What
Mr.
were those
Callum
called? Tamori?
Tamori, yes. So, and I think I guess it was implied that when they talk about like they have created like their own spirits,
Yeah.
we're referring to now the Tamuri.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's right. Um, so yeah, I mean, they're they're definitely plotting something. So like the King in Black, the witches, I think they all have a good point. Um, and I think now we knew, but now we like know hardcore that he tried to kill Rin, the King of Night. That's why she got injured back in the Child's Adventure. That's why he can no longer wield his sword. I'm guessing because of some like laws between the coven and or whatever. And I also assume that now that he was coming to kill Ame that night. We weren't sure if he was like coming to like steal the world's heart or something, but now
Yeah,
knowing what we know, I think he was trying to kill her so that they would have unanim-
yeah,
unanimous
unanimous.
decision
Yeah,
in the coven.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, we still have not much to say here other than just Indri saw a convenient moment to be like, we probably shouldn't vote on new witches right now. So
Oh yeah, I'm glad they did kind of push back against Indri. So we're like, yeah, well, let's add them, but Indri still basically ended it with being like, yeah, I'll let you guys know when I find a new one,
yeah, yeah,
which she
right.
clearly will not do. But I'm curious to
And
see
I
if
think
anything comes of that.
And I think Ame was like, I want to be on that committee
Yeah,
too. And I think that's when the above, not necessarily above the board, it wasn't really above the board, but Brennan, I think that's when he added the color of like, yes, but injury's not, there's no
yeah,
way in hell that, okay, let's do it.
yeah. And then she says that
So,
like, oh yeah, Ame, you're welcome to just send them my way, which
yeah,
so I can kill
yeah,
them or something.
yeah.
Um,
This one fell down too. I, it's very slippery
yeah,
in
it's
these
the
stairwells.
snow, the ice, it gets
Yeah.
people. Um,
So,
looking at my notes here, a couple things I wanted to mention. One is the kind of double-edged sword of having ignited Hikea from Ame's perspective. Like she woke her up, which saved her life, but now it also kind of caused her to vote against her because she's awake and she wants to, provide like help the world again type of thing. But in the fireside chat, Brennan revealed that it was a DC 25 persuasion on that roll that Ame made at like the beginning that Ikea would have voted no. So like it was was at least possible to come out of this episode with them have not allied with the stranger, which is cool.
That. I love that detail.
Yeah.
I will say something I like about Brennan's style. For me, with like a low level party, I try not to. I think DC 20 is probably the highest I'll do because I don't like people feeling like it's out of their hands or just they can't be successful. But I will say I've noticed Brennan has had a number of like big moments that are tied to these really high DCs, like that one, and then there was the one with Ursulon freeing Naram.
Yeah.
I think it was another one from that arc too. And I will say that Brennan does such a good job of like holding those really big DCs for when they really matter
Yeah.
most.
Yeah.
I know personally I want to do a better job of that, but I didn't realize that though, that there was an opportunity because I guess there was a roll, but I thought for some reason I thought she had rolled high. And so, but I guess not a 25 high.
Yeah. And
So,
so like it wasn't something he mentioned during the episode. And
yeah,
when
okay.
Ame rolled was like way before Hakea voted. So like, you know, it wasn't like, all right, Ame roll right now before Hakea reveals the vote. So but yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And it just makes you wonder like, well, what would have happened, you know?
Yeah,
But that's the beauty of D&D. You know, the dice kind of tell a story too.
that's right. That's
Um
right.
so yeah, I loved that. And then another little detail, I loved that going back to the argument in Ursulon, the fact that he only called her Sky and didn't say Suvi during that whole exchange. Like kind of like a little bit of a passive aggressive little, can't think of the word, but
Well, yeah, it's like
barb.
I read it as almost like this is who you're becoming. This is who you want to be now.
Right.
Is like a
Yeah.
extension of the Citadel. So I'll call you that as a result. Um, I didn't describe it well either, but
Just it was a very
I think
nice
I did.
choice from Lou that I appreciated.
Oh man, man, what a great episode! I
Yeah.
love this series, man. It's so good.
I'm really excited to see. I'm just excited to see what happens. And since it is the end of an arc, to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, like maybe there is going to be another minute time skip, you know, of like, okay, Suvi's going back to the Citadel, Ame's doing this, some amount of time passes, and we pick up arc 4 2 months later or something. And here's what's brought everybody back together or something. Or maybe there's no time skip and they don't split up. And I'm just curious to see how that happens, you know? And what's next? Like where Suvi, I'm sure, would want to go to the Citadel, but like what are Ame and Ursulon gonna want to do at this moment?
You know, there's one other detail, just as a one final last detail, is even though she identified the Gaius spell, it doesn't dispel it. So she's still
Right.
under
Right.
the effect of it. So if you'll indulge me for a second, if I can just read this description again. You put a magical command on a creature, forcing it to do something you decide. If it understands, wisdom saving throw, yada yada. None of that matters. If they act counter to your command, they take 5d10 psychic damage, which is a lot for a
Mm-hmm.
level 4 wizard.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out in the Discord how I think the way they phrased it was like it was especially cruel that Steel, being her mom, would put her in that position to take basically one-shot damage.
Yeah, it
Um,
speaks to Steele's number one priority not being the Citadel and not being
yeah.
Suvi, you know?
You can issue any command you choose, short of an activity that will result in their death. So if you issued suicidal command, the spell would end. The spell will end if you use an action to dismiss it. So Steel dismisses it. Otherwise, remove curse, greater restoration, or the wish spell. We know that Naram's sword can break curses, right? And I
True.
think Ursulon even offered to use it.
Yeah,
I
and Suvi
think,
got pissed.
yeah. But here's where it's interesting, though. Um, the duration's 30 days. If you cast it at a higher level, a 7th or 8th level, the duration is 1 year. And if you cast it at the 9th level, it's infinite.
Yeah.
It never ends unless you use one of those spells to
Right.
dispel it.
Right.
The point that I was getting at was she's identified it, but she's still under the effects of it.
Right.
So I do wonder if we do get a moment where she goes counter to the Citadel, if Brennan will have like a "and you're dead" moment, or what that might look like.
Yeah.
So anyway, just
Yeah.
a
I
random.
mean, I was wondering if that was going to happen during this arc. Like if, you know, and it's kind of like one of those fourth wall things where Suvi probably or Bria knows that. So like, probably it was ultimately up to her on whether or not she was gonna like
Yeah.
RP, wondering what was happening, and that didn't happen. Well, I mean it did, but she didn't ever like go starkly against it or anything. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I again imagine that one of Suvi's first moves is gonna be to go back to the Citadel, or at least to talk to Steel back on her ship through the telemet. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And so I would presume that Steel could remove the spell right then if she's being true to her word. Um, can you like can would you have to like recast Gaius to like issue another command? Like I wonder how that works. Like say you're under
Yeah.
the effects of a ninth level indefinite Gaius, could like you continually manipulate that person, or is it like a single command?
I think since the duration is 30 days as it's casted, it's any command. Um,
Like
because
meaning you could give new ones,
it says you can issue any command you choose.
but like for casting
Oh,
it, or just like you know what I'm saying? Like
oh, maybe okay, yeah, maybe it is just one command then. Okay, I see. I read it as do as many as you want, but I
mhm.
see how you're seeing it of
I'm not
the
saying it's that way. I'm
right,
curious how
but
it
like
works.
you have any option of any one command as long
Yeah.
as you're not ordering self-harm. I think it's probably the second one. It's
Yeah.
probably a single command.
I
Um,
agree, but if it is the other way and it's this ninth level where like Seal could continuously manipulate Suvi, that would make for some juicy possibilities. But I don't really see that happening,
yeah,
especially now that Suvi knows it's there.
it looks like it's a one command.
Okay,
Yeah. So, but
and
yeah.
then
So,
additionally, the modify memory we know is there, but
right.
seemingly as soon as Steele explains, Suvi's going to be cool with all of this. She'll be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
was, I had agency in this decision, and I agreed to do all of that."
Right.
So like at least those specific points I don't think will cause too much friction, but like
Yeah.
all of those scry spells and stuff is another question.
Yes.
Will
Right.
Suvi ask that,
Right.
you know? And I'm also
Yeah.
surprised that like even though Steel didn't bring it up, that there was no like I don't know, like Suvi, what's that necklace? Like, if it was her, like there was seemingly no probing to try and solve that issue.
Yeah.
If that, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Very curious. Were there any other scry? Like we know that there were the Citadel ones, but were there any others? I can't remember. Like were there other sigils that were mentioned of like other factions?
I
Or
don't
was it
think so.
okay?
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. Join the Discord for more chatter around this and new episode tomorrow to wrap up the arc.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I guess we'll probably find out tomorrow, and maybe they've already announced it. But I'm assuming there's going to be another break, like
Yeah, I
a
think
little
so.
bit of a break between when the next one starts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So yeah,
So,
I'll be sad that we'll be off for a while. But yeah, the finale tomorrow, so I'm very excited.
but you know what? They always come back. Unlike my dad. I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. It's just a joke. Me and my dad are cool.
Me and Ted are cool now. Is it
Like
Ted?
that's me and Chad? No, I don't know.
Yeah, Derek comedy. If any of you guys know,
Yeah.
you let us know. Um, but yeah, I guess join the Discord. We'll be talking about this. I don't know. We might have to talk about this next one before, like sooner than we usually put these out, because I'll probably be antsy,
Yeah, yeah.
especially since we
Okay.
got a break, so there's no normal schedule.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
see.
Right.
We'll
Yeah.
see.
All
But yeah,
right.
that's all I got. Bye, my friends. Thanks for tuning in.